Let's see. I want to keep this as short as possible.
Thank you.
Yes, I joined DSA back in, well, the night of the 2016 election for, person who's our current president. And over 2 years, I came up to just say that anyway, I want to just use my experience of having been a new socialist to give a chance. My first task as an organizer would be to make an open call to help members, or at least to bring members in to say participate in a workshop to produce working standard instructions for scenarios we all face as members of the DSA. These would be dealing with orientation, how do you talk about DSA with other people? Agitation, which is what do you do when you're hoping to move someone on an issue that involves a resolution that national DSA has passed, say, how do you talk about prison abolition with people? And the other set of instructions I'd want to draft as a group to give new members or current members who are still trying to pick out which committee they want to focus on. The purpose of this would be to give them their first group assignment, so to speak, to being part of an action-oriented learning team. And doing that would then, I hope, would give them a chance of seeing what kind of skills they might want to develop, or what areas they already know how they'd wish to grow. And that experience, if that's what they spend time doing when they're first joined DSA, that could be an extension of, say, either Socialist Night School. And give me a second here, one sec. Oh, darn. Okay, that was my little sister wanting to show me a TikTok video. Let's see. Anyway, I would say, I think I've said that orientation, agitation, and assignments, because those are the things that I think an organizer as on the executive board would want to help onboard people, not just with being a DSA member, but being a fellow organizer. And that's my main goal with that. Yeah, and yes, I have 3 younger siblings.
Right on. Well, I'm sure it's a good video. Make sure to check it out when we're done. You never want to miss good content. Next, would our candidate for treasurer like to go? Ellen?
Sure, I'd love to. I created my candidate statement 2 minutes ago, so I haven't posted it anywhere, but I'll read it to you. First of all, you should know I'm one of the oldest and one of the newest members of DSA. I'm older than dirt, and I've been a member for about 2.5 years since the book tour event with Max Elbaum. I can't remember when that was, but the book was published in 2018. So there are a lot of things I love about this chapter, and most of them involve examples of the welcoming attitude of the leadership. At one of the early general membership meetings, there was a discussion about how to set up a bank account, and I said, I know how to do that. I can set up a bank account for an unincorporated community group, and why on earth are we incorporating? And Austin, who was the treasurer at the time, immediately responded with, would you like to join the finance committee? I almost fainted. In other organizations, even women's groups, I mean, so it's not just because, you know, he didn't dismiss me because I'm female, but in groups where we're all women, and where I was, you know, at the right age, I would have been told, don't worry, we've got this. Go away, play somewhere else, little girl. So I was really impressed. I think my generation tends more to protect its turf, or at least the people in this chapter tend to reach out and include me. So I'm supposed to say why I'm running, and the answer is because I was asked and nobody else was looking to be tapped. So here I am. Let me tell you my qualifications. Since its founding 20 years ago, I've been active on the board of the Marxist School of Sacramento, and for the last 15, I've been the president and the de facto treasurer. And I'm also the secretary/treasurer of the Northern California region of the Committees of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism. And both of these positions involve using home and small business financial software. You know, the mini things like Microsoft Money and Quicken. It is Quicken, that's the cheap one, right? And QuickBooks is the professional level. Whichever one is the not professional one, I've got that. I can enter income and expenses, and I can create categories, and I can create balance sheets and cash flow and profit and loss statements. And I come from a generation where we balanced our checkbooks every month. So I'm fanatical about making sure the electronic data matches our actual existing funds. And if you don't know what balancing a checkbook means, never mind, it's from the era of rotary phones. For about a year and a half, starting in early 2011, I was treasurer of the U.S. section of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And we had a bookkeeper and an office staff, so I wasn't required to physically manage the money, but to review QuickBooks reports, or the other way around, whichever. I can log in to the professional software and I can generate reports, but I haven't got too much experience with that, but we don't need it for this chapter. I see the treasurer job as requiring me to keep track of our finances and make sure we're following all the rules of the California Secretary of State, the Franchise Tax Board, and the IRS. My job, I don't want it to be to raise money or to set financial policy, but to make sure that the financial policies agreed on by the chapter are carried out. And unless nobody votes for me or unless another candidate came up while I wasn't looking, I'll be elected. If somebody younger wants the job, I think somebody younger should have it. But if it's me, I hope I will serve you well. Thank you.
I think the chapter's thrilled to have you on the board, Ellen. And we've got one more candidate present today. Aside from Dalton being absent, our other candidate for co-chair, Andreas Estebanez, is not here today. But we have one more candidate for organizer, and that is Casey Thompson. Casey, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running?
Hey, thanks, James. I'm running because James nominated me for this position. So thank you, James. I'm very flattered. So I am a relatively new DSA member. I've really only been active with the chapter since about November of last year. But y'all seem like a good bunch of people, so I'm happy to be involved with you. I am pretty experienced when it comes to organizing. For my day job, I am a labor relations representative for the California School Employees Association, where organizing is just part of the job. You know, represent about 3,000 classified school employees, a little further south down in the valley from Stockton, currently down to Gustine and Santanella area, but just had a new hire, so I'm passing those chapters off hopefully very soon. Anyways, yeah, so I do that for my day job. For the past, I don't know, 13 years or so, I've been involved with various campaigns. I used to fundraise for Quality California to try to overturn Proposition 8 and the Sierra Club. I've worked on, as a volunteer, knocking doors for a handful of candidates for state senate and assembly and Congress, and I've helped organize volunteers and train them for those types of activities in the past. And yeah, just so I'm really happy to be involved with this group. And I guess as an organizer for the chapter, one thing I could see as far as maybe making some changes to the way chapter does things is I could foresee trying to help our committees do more active organizing and engagement with members. Things like right now we're doing a lot of phone banking and things like that because we've been surveying our own members. We have been working some Prop 15 stuff through various statewide and like labor and electoral committee organized groups. And I'm doing that for work too right now. And so I think though in the future, I mean, I think the education work that we do as a chapter is important, but I think, you know, if you want to get people engaged, you got to give them something to do. And so we need to have lots of active activities and events on the calendar from all our committees, because that's how you get people to be, to take ownership of these movements. I mean, this is not, you know, I do not foresee this as Casey has a plan and then, you know, y'all just roll with it. You know, we all need to be like active participants in creating a new future, and I hope that, DSA here in Sacramento can play a significant role for that in this region as we tackle, things like rent control, stopping Mayor Steinberg from becoming a dictator, defunding the local sheriff's department and the police department, hopefully tarring and feathering Scott Jones and Emery Schubert, and, just making life a little better in our little corner of the valley here. So thanks for your vote. I believe I'm running on a post, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Casey. So yeah, we've got a few minutes until we're going to start hearing from our from some of our electoral people. So we'd like to leave it open for a Q&A. If anybody has a question for any of our candidates, either individually as a whole, please feel free to just type stack in chat or just unmute yourself and ask. Don't be shy now. We want to get to know each other here. Marie, go ahead.
Ellen, I am so impressed with everything you know about QuickBooks and different financial software, and I was wondering if you could train me to be better at my job as NLG treasurer.
I was trying to explain I can generate a report. Sure. I can tell you everything I know. That won't take very long. You have my number? We do have each other's numbers now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, when you're on the board, you'll be very easy to find.
Okay. Y'all should make sure you get this info in the chat. So we've got Ian on stack, and then Alyssa and David. So Ian, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so there's definitely a diversity of tactics and strategies and philosophies within the labor movement. Some unions within our area are very democratic and progressive and doing and funding Measure A and Measure C, such as my employer. But other labor unions aren't that way, right? They're very top down. Some of them take very conservative positions, wrong positions. And so my question for the candidates is, how will you work with progressive labor unions in the area, build relationships with them, and how will you move the labor movement left where it needs to be moved left?
I think that was open to anyone on the board. So if anyone wants to, Naomi, do you want to go?
Sure. One of the things that I actually want to do if elected co-chair is get the perspective of the people that are on the various committees and those co-chairs, because I feel like the people that have the best knowledge about that are the ones that are actually doing it. So I don't have a specific plan for the labor committee. I don't have a specific plan for the healthcare committee. I don't have a specific plan for the community response committee. What I want to do is get the input from the community, from those committee members and the co-chairs to find out how the chapter can best drive your efforts and what we can do as an entire chapter to guide what you feel is the best way to go, instead of saying, okay, here's my plan for this. This is how we're going to do it. But that's just me.
Is there anyone else who would want to respond to that question? Casey, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and thanks, James. Yeah, Ian, I think that as far as having a very member-driven union movement here in Sacramento, I mean, that's something I always try to, I try to let my members take the lead in my day job, right, where it would be very easy as like a rep to sort of commandeer chapter business or just, but I think it's important that things be, guided by the chapters, by the membership directly. Based on what I know about, some of the labor stuff here in Sacramento, because my office is actually not in Stockton, right? So I'm not part of the CLC up here and stuff. I do San Joaquin, Calaveras County. But here in Sacramento, I know it's CIU 1000. Obviously, we talked about this a lot. There is, it's huge leadership. No offense to anybody who's a supporter, leadership sucks. in SEIU 1000, like at the top, very anti-worker, very pro-real estate developer for some reason. And so I would be totally down to help. Like, I know we have tons of people in our membership that are SEIU 1000 members, and I'd be super down to help like organize all those people and maybe help them put together some sort of medium to long-term plan to really consolidate like their voices to maybe start an insurgency movement within their own union, because it is supposed to be democratic. I know it'd be difficult given the volume of members, but I think that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I should do it, man. Like it's you have to use the tools of democracy, right? So we have to organize and whip votes and stuff, basically. And I'd be super happy to like, lend my guidance, advice, whatever, as a labor rep to help like sort of guide those movements. But it's going to have to be, obviously member driven, right? I mean, there's SEIU 1000 members in our ranks. I think we got to start there and make sure they're all together, and then maybe formulate a plan and spread from there. And we can do that with any union that we have constituent members here in our chapter. I just think SEIU 1000 obviously jumps out because it's the biggest and they control the local CLC.
Right on. So I see you on Stackman and Simon. I'd like to get to Alyssa and David's question first, though, and then maybe we can come back to this. Listen, David, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. This one's more directed at the organizers. So if the current proposed bylaw amendment that's changing the organizer positions doesn't pass, would you consider potentially taking up some of those newly kind of outlined duties? Because right now our bylaws basically say the organizer is charged with sponsoring and assuming ultimate responsibility for the actions and operations of select committees. That's the entire description of what an organizer does. So would you consider potentially, if the newly outlined duties don't pass, to take those up on your own?
I would say, or at least if I may, as a direct to Alyssa, I'll come back to Ian's question. I would say yes. I would think that part of the task of an organizer, at least with respect to those duties, at some point, all the organizers here at least would, the three of us would probably have to do some sort of event where we make an open call to all our membership, new and current, to think about who would want to be like part of our, like, say, cabinets, so to speak. So like anyone who would be interested in like taking delegated assignments from an organizer, especially to like help out.
So sorry to cut this one off, but we do have a speaker here today. Let's see, Hubert, thank you for being here. I'm going to give the floor to Ian and Hubert so they can present on on Proposition 22. I'm sorry, I'm going to hand it to Joe first.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to introduce. So we're to the next part of our program. The Electoral Committee created a endorsement subcommittee that has sent out questionnaires to folks who are seeking Sacramento DSA's endorsement or are seeking for Sacramento to endorse a position on a ballot initiative. I'm going to go ahead and put the questionnaire, the completed questionnaire, or link to it, in the chat for the No on 22 campaign, on which Ian and Hubert are going to be talking today. For everybody who is speaking on an endorsement today, we're giving you 5 minutes to give an introductory presentation, and I'd like for you to address in those 5 minutes how your campaign is going to build the power of the multiracial working class against capitalism and the ruling class, what you estimate your reasonable chances of success are, and what is your plan to win. So thanks very much for coming, Hubert and Ian, and we will put it to you.
Actually, well, how I'd like this to go is, Hubert, can you share your story for the first 2.5 minutes, and then I might address the 3 questions for the last 2.5 minutes. Hubert is a driver leader who's been working for us for more than a year now, I think, with We Drive Progress. And so Hubert, if you can share your story.
Yes, my name is Hubert Reese. I came across We Drive Progress a little bit over a year ago. I've been driving for Uber and Lyft full-time for 3 years, mostly in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the reason why I joined is because I've seen how it wasn't a win-win situation between these gig corporations. And as a driver, I wanted to take a stand, and I'm in full support with We Drive Progress with AB5 and also against Proposition 22. And I've been helping with participation in the caravans and so forth. The reason why I joined is because all up and down the line, I see how the drivers ourselves are neglected in terms of we do all the work. We primarily do all the work, but we get little dividends. We get crumbs. We get hardly anything. And it's just not fair. And that's why as a leader, I want to help organize other drivers to form a union and to form a united front, so that we can go up against these corporations that are set to, to deprive us and oppress us and make the conditions for us worse. So that's why I joined, and I'm happy to participate, and it's very meaningful, it's very positive, and we need to organize and get other people to vote no on Proposition 22 on this coming election. So I'm glad to be a part of this whole project. Thank you.
Gotcha. And so to quickly answer the 3 questions, how will your campaign build the power of the multiracial working class against capitalism and the ruling class? Well, 78% of Uber and Lyft drivers are people of color. The vast majority of them are immigrants. And if we're neglecting a workforce who is mostly people of color and not joining solidarity between white union members and these people who right now don't have the clearest way to a union, then I think that is not the most multiracial organizing. So I think that we need to come together. 2, what is your likelihood of success? And I want to be mindful of my time. I know I only have like a minute left. What is your likelihood of success? I think it's not certain at all. Uber and Lyft are spending $180 million on this campaign. The only campaigns in the United States right now that are spending more money is Joe Biden's campaign, Trump's campaign, and then the Senate Committee for something, I forget the name of it, but basically it's the most expensive campaign in the United States right now. And so we're up against Uber and Lyft. They're going to spend lots of money. Labor is never going to be able to raise enough money, but if we all come together, reach out to community groups, be on message together, and do massive phone banking and text banking, then hopefully we can win. 3, what is your plan to win? Well, it's exactly that. So we're reaching out to as many community groups as possible and making sure that we have the opportunity to use your voter guide, use your platforms to your membership and also externally, and make sure that hundreds and hundreds of organizations throughout California are all on the same message, saying no on Proposition 22, and making sure that we get as many phone bankers as possible, because this is going to be a hard fight, but it's a winnable fight. And thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Ian. And now we can open up the floor to questions about the No on 22 campaign. Okay, Simon, go ahead.
Hi, it's Sam Rate. My only question is,
sorry.
oh, that's okay. My only question is, how can we help you? How can we help you win?
Yes, well, the first step is endorsing, and then we have a list of 6 things that we are asking of every single community group. It's in the questionnaire that I posed, that's there. A couple things we're asking is for phone bankers, no on your voter guide, to internally send an email to your membership about No on Proposition 22, to externally boost social media, be available for rapid response press, and then there's a sixth thing that honestly I forget right now.
Okay, Ben.
Hi, question for Ian and Hubert. So which unions are backing We Drive Progress in the No on 22 campaign?
So We Drive Progress is funded by SEIU Local 1021, which is my employer. The broader No on 22 campaign is being funded mostly by the California Federation of Labor, as well as SEIU, Teamsters, and just the typical labor groups.
Okay, so that's SEIU International, right?
SEIU State Council and Teamsters Council,
Okay.
something. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Corey, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I thank you so much to Ian and where did he go?
Hubert's here.
Oh, okay. Hi. Sorry, I didn't see on my screen. Thank you so much, Hubert, and for your work. And I, really hope that we can endorse this, because this is a really important victory that we have to defend. It's an important reminder to all of us that, when we win electoral victories, we have to be prepared to defend them as well, because, power gives up nothing easily. So just thank you so much, and solidarity.
Really appreciate the support. I just wanted to add that they are mayors of the city of San Francisco, Oakland, and San Diego. These city governments have formed a legal lawsuit against Uber and Lyft for their mistreatment of us as drivers. And also a lot of political legislators at the Capitol and government offices are in support on behalf of the Uber and Lyft drivers. So we have a lot of support across the whole political formation and grounds. And Uber and Lyft has been pushed up against the wall now, but they're using their money as their last resort. So this is the time to really push forward.
Okay, Alan is next on stack, and I'd like to close so we can move on. We've got at least 2 more endorsements to talk about, and I want to respect everybody's time. So if you got a comment, if you could try to keep it short.
Well, it was a sort of a comment with a question mark, actually. The California Alliance of Retired Americans has joined, which represents about 1 million people through affiliated organizations, because it's a coalition, 1 million members in California. It has joined the ranks of those opposing Prop 22. But in the discussion the other day, people were saying, oh, but don't people like to have the flexibility of choosing their hours and when they're going to take lunch? And, they have this idyllic view of what it's like to be a gig worker. So I hope the document, eventually their fears were quelled just by pointing out who is promoting Prop 22.
I appreciate your question, and just to cut you off in the interest of time, because it is a complex answer that we're going to have to give. Flexibility is, the fear of losing flexibility is a lie by Uber and Lyft, and I'll have Hubert respond to that.
Well, in terms of the flexibility, in terms of that's an excuse that Uber and Lyft uses as a way to make forward with everybody supporting something. So I mean, it's Uber and Lyft have really never supported AB5. We don't even know how it looks like realistically in terms of if they had adopted it and would have taken any part to make it real. So that whole flexibility question that they raise and comment is just a way to throw off the drivers. Really, they have never instrumentally use the whole concept of adopting AB 5. They have rejected it totally. So that's an excuse for them, you know, to get support in supporting Proposition 22.
And JR, I'm going to understand the time. Let me just quickly say that the state attorney general, the San Francisco city attorney, as well as the San Diego city attorney and Los Angeles city attorney have all said there's nothing about being an employee that means that you'll lose flexible hours. There are many employees, including union employees, such as day laborers who have flexible schedules. But it's a lie and fear tactic that Uber and Lyft are trying to use in order to scare people. Really, the only thing that's going to allow drivers to have a say about flexible schedules or anything, because tomorrow Uber and Lyft can, even if they are independent contractors, implement schedules. Uber and Lyft have all the power. The only thing that's going to allow Uber and Lyft drivers to have a voice is by coming together to form a union. So Proposition 22 is not the answer. It's coming together, organizing, and forming a union.
Exactly.
So we've got 2 candidates and another proposition. I'd like to move on if we can. And I see, Emery, you had a question. Is it possible you could put that question in the chat and see if Ian or Hubert might be able to answer it that way? Okay, great. So the next person that I will introduce is Fatima Malik, who is asked for our endorsement, and I will, let me go ahead and grab her candidate endorsement questionnaire so that you can take a look. She's running for a position on the SMUD Board of Directors. And as we're asked of everybody else, if you could, in your 5-minute introductory remarks, please explain to us how your campaign is going to build the power of the multiracial working class against capitalism and the ruling class, what you estimate your chances of success are, and what is your plan to win. Thanks very much for joining us, Fatima. Thanks for your completed questionnaire, and we're all looking forward to hearing from you.
Hi, thank you. I just want to make sure, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here, and I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Fatima Malik, and I'm running to widen the circle of justice and equity on the SMUD board in Sacramento County. The energy sector is a monopoly. It's a captive market that multicultural working class families are struggling to survive in. The wisdom of the civil rights movement teaches us to avoid the master's tools when pushing for freedom. SMUD, as a publicly owned utility, should know this, but is failing to practice it. For far too long, SMUD has modeled itself off of the private utilities and pursued a monopolistic agenda that does not serve the people as well as it should. SMUD must do better, and we need to push for new leadership that will recalibrate SMUD's moral compass. This means putting people at the center and pushing strategies to empower the public to achieve as much independence and freedom as possible. Also, ensuring that everyone has access to 100% clean, affordable, and reliable energy. I have signed the pledge to champion the Green New Deal and support the Justice Democrats that are fighting for Medicare for all. And in the same vein, I will fight for broadband internet for all at SMUD. I reflect the socioeconomic diversity of District 5. The incumbent doesn't. And representation from underrepresented multicultural communities matters, especially from our most vulnerable residents, which I am one of. District 5 includes some of the most multicultural communities with limited, low, and no income households in Sacramento. And no matter how well-intentioned, the incumbent will never understand the economic conditions of its most vulnerable SMUD customers or be able to relate to those populations with the least disposable income. We need more leadership and representation on the SMUD board from people like myself who keenly understand what it's like to choose between paying the energy bills or for groceries, and how historically disadvantaged communities have had to bear the brunt of climate change and the burdens of negative health outcomes caused by fossil fuel-induced air pollution, and now the climate change-induced heat waves and the pandemic that is disproportionately affecting Brown and Black communities. We can win this election and be successful by running a people-powered campaign, a grassroots campaign. Right now, we have over 30 volunteers that have already reached over 20,000 voters in Ward 5, and we will be ramping things up even more as we approach election day. No one has ran such an inclusive campaign for SMUD in recent memory. And frankly, my campaign has already created success. Under the current leadership's watch, SMUD planned to keep their 5 fossil fuel plants open indefinitely, and even while claiming they were fighting climate change. Only recently has the incumbent begun acknowledging the need to move faster, and it was only after they learned that I was running for this office. SMUD's leadership acknowledged a planetary climate emergency and passed a climate emergency declaration. But the incumbent, like 5 out of 7 of the SMUD board members, run uncontested and have been complacent in their role as our representatives. In contrast with the incumbent, I have been fighting for environmental justice to address climate change for over 20 years. And unlike the current leadership, the incumbent still has not stated that he will fight the polluting power plants in our most disadvantaged communities within the next decade. In 2005, when I learned that Sacramento County didn't allow people to grow their own food in their front yards and abandoned lots, I mobilized with local advocates and organized my neighbors to challenge the law, and we changed it. Now I plan to take that community empowerment lens to SMUD to allow for people to have more options for renewable energy products and choices to produce and store their own energy. Although the incumbent might be a competent public servant, he is also a career politician too entrenched in the old energy utility monopoly. That way of thinking is not designed to ever embrace climate change or fight capitalism to protect working class families with the emergency or the depth that I have and will bring as a public servant. My win plan includes the following 3 things. 1, securing the support of individual leaders and organizations in our community who are on the ground making the community a better place, such as Luis Sanchez, Executive Director of the Community Resources Project, Ed Smeloff, former SMUD board member that implemented community solar programs, and the most progressive Democratic organization in our region, the Wellstone Progressive Democrats. And the reason is because Sacramento politics are insular and they toe the line, and typically the Democratic Party establishment, with few brave exceptions, will back the incumbent. But that doesn't matter because I am winning the support of people closer to the grassroots who are doing the work, who have the network and passion to reach out more closely to the everyday voter who relates and is receptive to my message. Number 2, we are looking to mobilize 60 volunteers to reach out personally to at least 65,000 voters via text and phone, and have a personal conversation about why they should vote in the SMUD election and back me. This is a COVID era grassroots campaign. So because of that, number 3, we're going to be running advertisements and organic promotions on social media and invest in 1 or 2 direct mailers, resources permitting. And lastly, we can be even more effective with the support of your organization and your amazing network of experienced organizers and activists. I want to thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fatima. So I want to, we'll open it up for questions. I think because we have another candidate, another ballot initiative, and I think some interest in more questions of the executive board, presumptive members. If we could go to 3 questions, and really if people can just ask questions, not make comments, that would be great. If you are interested in a question of Fatima, go ahead and write stack in your name in the chat. Okay, Amrit, go ahead.
Fatima, thank you so much for your presentation. I've never voted for SMUD board before. Is the election going to be on my general election ballot, or is it a separate election?
Yes, I will be on your November 3rd presidential election ballot. And the reason you haven't probably even voted is, like I mentioned, these seats are ran uncontested, so these board members get appointed, right? So this is the first time you actually have an option on the ballot.
Great. Corey.
Hi, Fatima. Thank you so much for your presentation. You might not know this, but this weekend our national DSA has convened a Green New Deal campaign summit, and we've over 60 chapters, I think, have sent delegates, and so we're discussing strategy for how to see a Green New Deal done in concrete terms. And so I was wondering what and I'm so glad that you signed on to the pledge. So how do you envision a Green New Deal for Sacramento?
Yeah, so, you know, the Green New Deal in Sacramento is going to require a host of activities, incentives, and investments. First and foremost, we are going to have what is termed right now in the energy world an order of magnitudes, right? And so what that means is we need as much clean, renewable energy, right? And so when we think about that, we think about water, wind, and solar. And when we think about in Sacramento, SMUD already has, let's say, the hydroelectric power at its capacity, which quite honestly, that capacity is dwindling due to the droughts and due to everything going on with the heat waves. So we have to look at solar as that next option right now, as the most viable option. And so when we think about what that's going to look like in Sacramento, we really have to focus on SMUD. It provides an economic engine. And unfortunately, right now, that economic engine is designed to, you know, focus on this aging infrastructure and, you know, monopolize the solar industry so that only utility scale solar is allowed. And so because of that, what the Green New Deal will look like in Sacramento is going to require, one, prioritizing the closure of the power plants, right? We have to stop polluting the air. And yet we still need to be able to produce affordable, locally produced energy. And in doing so, that's going to create jobs and hopefully also allow for the adequate transition of employees at SMUD so that they can get retrained and retooled so that we begin looking at how do we stop transmitting energy from thousands and thousands of miles away and begin creating those infrastructures in our most disadvantaged communities. And so there are opportunities right now. Matter of fact, this Wednesday, SMUD is having a board meeting on the 16th to have critical decisions around what solar will look like in Sacramento in the future. And quite frankly, right now, it does not include a lot of community choice. It does not include microgrids. It does not include distributed energy resources. And those things must be prioritized and must be invested in. And as we look at SMUD, in terms of their integrated resource plan, in terms of their sustainable communities initiative, in terms of, you know, all of the great things that they talk about in their strategic directions, those plans need to include more neighborhood level comprehensive energy plans that are going to focus on and prioritize the most disadvantaged communities first, right? So if you've looked at their sustainable communities map, it's no surprise in Sacramento, you have this red map, right? It just turns super bright red for North and South Sacramento. And we must prioritize place-based strategies and specifically sustainability as it relates to fighting environmental justice in the communities that are being harmed the most.
Great. You know, it looks like we've got on stack Ian and Ben. Ben had a question which has been answered. Ian asked about your relationship with IBEW and how you'll progress this relationship moving forward. You write in your questionnaire that you'll be working with them. So if you want to elaborate beyond your questionnaire, go ahead and then we can move on to the next campaign.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments on that. So one, you know, I will just share that I support unions. I'm a member of the SEIU Local 1000 myself, and I'm looking forward to building inroads and relationships with the IBEW. And the IBEW is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And I've actually reached out to Hunter Stern, who is one of the members of that union. I will share with you, though, that, you know, the union has already endorsed the incumbent, right? And so, you know, building those inroads is going to require some time. However, as a community engagement specialist, I have spent my life's work and, you know, have focused on collaboration and partnerships. And that is actually a skill set that I will bring to this SMUD board, as well as looking forward to working with this union in particular to not only identify and recognize what their needs are, but also to ensure that as we begin to look at what we can do to address not only the climate change, the emergency declaration, but also as we look at how do we actually focus on justly transitioning SMUD into this new era, it's going to be important to work with this union as they are very, very critical, and the work they do is critical. And so we want to ensure that we work with our local union representatives to maintain those partnerships and to maintain those relationships.
Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking your time to join us today. I'm going to move on to the Yes on 21 campaign. I've linked the completed questionnaire for that campaign in the chat, and we'll be hearing from our member, Will Fair, on this endorsement request.
Hi, sorry, I was bringing everything up. As the JR said, I'm going to be talking about Proposition 21. Please don't judge it too harshly by its association. Proposition 21, for those of you who don't know, follows upon Prop 10 from 2018, which was an attempt to repeal Costa-Hawkins, which is a law in California that prohibits communities from establishing rent control on a lot of different property types. It allows some, but it has a lot of restrictions in there. It was passed in 1995, I believe. So Prop 10 was a straight repeal, but unfortunately that failed, though it was close. Unlike Prop 10, Prop 21 it seeks to sort of combat the worst parts of Costa-Hawkins, but is not a straight repeal of it. But it would allow rent control on single-family homes, which is currently not allowed under Costa-Hawkins. It allows rent control on any building or qualifying building built over 15 years ago, which changes it from Costa-Hawkins, which it requires the building to have been built before 1995 in most cases. And it also has vacancy control, which would prevent the landlord from hiking the rent with no restrictions after someone moves out. So yeah, it would allow local communities to start putting into place more robust renter assistance programs and rent control to try to keep people in their homes. Over time, we've seen housing become a site of capital accumulation more and more, especially following the 2008 housing crisis. We saw a huge rise in corporate landlords and entities like Invitation Homes, which are big, are heavily involved in Sacramento, which is one of the places with the highest amount of rental units, and also has been having the highest rent increases in the last few years, or some of them. Anyway, Prop C, or Prop 21, works very well with Measure C locally, which is our local rent control effort. Measure C is reactive to Costa-Hawkins, so if Prop 21 passes in conjunction with it, it'll allow Measure C to be a lot more effective and apply to a lot more units. As I said, we've seen this huge rise in corporate landlords. This would help to limit their power and allow communities to start curbing their worst practices and these egregious rent hikes that we've been seeing that have been just devastating vulnerable communities. We've definitely seen that happen in Sacramento. It's happening everywhere in California and across the country, but at least we can hopefully get Prop 21 passed in California. As our plan to win, it's already heavily integrated into a lot of the official campaign efforts by Measure C. Phone banks have started for that, and all the phone banks have been Measure C and Prop 21 in conjunction with each other, making the ask for both. They're pretty tied together. Very few people who are going to be pro Measure C are going to be anti 21, or vice versa. So yeah, it's already put out there, but we could of course also hopefully have it be in if we end up doing any canvassing or crowd canvassing and stuff to farmers markets, combine those two efforts with Measure C. And then So basically what we're looking for is first primarily an endorsement, and then also just volunteers for running these phone banks. There are phone banks set up for Measure C and Proposition 21, for pretty much every day until the election. So we're going to need a lot of people to staff those. And also, since it is so closely tied in, at least with the official Measure C campaign that we've been helping out a lot with as DSA, it would be nice to have it endorsed as well. So we're not, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, it was a bit rambling.
Thanks very much, Will. Given that the chapter has not only endorsed but been heavily involved in pushing for Measure C for several years now, I don't think Prop 21 is going to be controversial. If anybody's got a question for Will, go ahead. And if you can't, again, just try to limit your question to a question, not a comment. And we'll open up the floor for staff. No one will interpret a lack of interest in question as a lack of interest in the proposition itself. Okay, going once, going twice. We will move on to the final part of this endorsement forum. Thomas Goetz is, and I hope that, I'm sorry, Goetz, I'm sorry, I pronounced your name incorrectly. I think I did that before with Fatima. I will link Thomas's completed questionnaire in the Slack, or not the Slack, I've already done that in the Slack, but in the chat right here. Thomas is running to be a Citrus Heights counselor. He's completed the questionnaire, which I've linked now in the chat. And Thomas, you got 5 minutes to introduce yourself, and we'd like you to address how your campaign and when you're in office will build the power of the multiracial working class against capitalism and the ruling class, what you think your reasonable likelihood of success is, and what is your plan to win. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm sorry about the little internet disruption, but that's Comcast for you. My name is Thomas Goetz. I am running for Citrus Heights City Council for District 3. My major goal of my campaign and what I will be trying to accomplish in office is to provide a tiny house community for the homeless population here. That being said, I've already reached out to labor unions because my intent is both to get a centralized location where the homeless services can provide their services instead of spending 30 to 60% of their time, depending on who you ask, searching for the homeless population, which has even gotten worse with the COVID, and cops have been harassing them even more, and it's gotten harder for services to reach those people that need them. Having a centralized location where A, they can store and rest and be safe, B, they'll have a door to lock tonight, which is increasingly more important for women that happen to be homeless. And C, the homeless population tends to be more comprised of the most disadvantaged of us, whether it be people of color, LGBTQ, or of the like. So I would like to provide them housing. I would like to get them into a union labor job where they're able to practice their skills, get better, and have job protections that they legitimately wouldn't have elsewhere, and have always that skill set to fall back on should they end up going elsewhere and not really liking it. That being said, I am feeling pretty comfortable on my success. My opponent is great, is very well connected with a city councilor who was asked to step down in 2018 and didn't, and was centered in 2018. Fortunately, that councilor is also up for re-election this cycle, and I have reached out to his opponent, and Nicole Caster. She has been endorsed by the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party, and she is completely on board with the tiny house initiative. So I really don't see that's going to be too much of a problem there. The sitting incumbent for District 1 is super controversial. He has gone out of his way to stalk people using his police credentials, And I very much feel that his negativity is tied to my opponent's negativity, which is just a benefit for myself. My plan to win is going to be reaching out to people in the safest ways you can in COVID. So currently has been mostly social media outreach. I have obviously had to go door to door to get to get the signatures. I've also reached out to the labor unions, labor groups, and hoping for their endorsement, and of course yours. But the plan really is just to talk to people, or at least get the conversation started. I have, in the next few days, we'll be finalizing a format for virtual house parties. I know a number of people in the community that are able to host these house parties, and it'll be Zoom just much like this. Actually, pretty much identical to this, where I'm going to give an intro, and then people are going to be able to ask questions because they should know who they should know who's trying to represent them. 4.5 minutes. I think that's good.
Yeah. Good. Okay, we'll open up the floor to questions. And James.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why you chose tiny homes as your strategy for providing housing over, say, shelters or transitional housing or an affordable complex or something like that. Just curious.
Yeah. So my background with the homeless community is the fact that I was homeless twice when I was 18, and I currently own my home now. So it's been a long 10 years or 15 years. But that being said, the reason I am leaning towards tiny houses is because there is nothing like having your own home to being able to uplift yourself. The intent will be these as transitional houses, but some people are going to need longer time than others. And that's just a fact of the matter. The major benefit to this is those people who will need longer time will have a safe place, and the services will be able to reach them directly, consistently, and as needed.
We've got a question from Naomi. How do you feel about Citrus Heights council members who are still wanting to spend city funds to revitalize Sunrise Mall?
Disgusting. And I made that very apparent to the labor union when I spoke with the local unions. My opponent is very big on the revitalization of Citrus Mall. He is excited about being able to sit on a 10-story restaurant and look at the view. I'm furious that the city is spending so much damn money on something that's only going to be providing minimum wage jobs. That is completely unacceptable, and I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but it's disgusting and we need to stop it.
Okay, Connie.
Hi, I was just wondering where your finances are going to come from and your resources to build the tiny houses, to find the mobile homes and the resources to build them.
As someone who is pretty left of a lot of the candidates out there, I was very much prepared for the "how are you going to pay it" question, and it's actually pretty simple in our case. In 2022, Citrus Heights will be receiving its property tax money for the first time. When the city incorporated, we ended up with an agreement for the county that they will receive our property taxes for 25 years. That deal expires in 2022. Starting in 2022, the city will receive a minimum of $5 million per year that we've never had before. That money coming in should go directly into the community. That would include the tiny house initiative, using local shops. The other major thing I want to get done with that money is reintroduce apprenticeship programs into the local high schools. I've talked to labor unions about that. They already have a model, and I am waiting for them to send that model over so I can review it and see if we can get on the same page to get that done.
Thank you.
Question, and I'm sorry. Question from Corey. What is the party breakdown in your district?
The party breakdown is more on the conservative side. To be quite honest, there's a lot of Bush Republicans. There's still some Trumpers, but there's some Bush Republicans in there too. The conversation I've had with Bush Republicans has actually been extremely beneficial. All of them have been exceedingly open to the idea, especially because they don't have to spend more money.
Okay, we got a question from either Alyssa or David or both of them. Do you feel like identifying with a socialist organization may be controversial in Citrus Heights? How will you address this in the course of the campaign?
On my website, I actually say that I'm a socialist. If you go to my website, the first thing listed is socialist, the second is veteran, the third is neighbor. I purposely put the socialist and veteran next to each other to kind of offset that balance for some people that are a little shy of the word. That being said, I have had those conversations with people. I have told people, I have my sign next to, with neighbors next to that have Trump signs up. This is a very conservative, even my little area where I live is a very conservative community. That being said, I came out and said, I'm pro-union, I'm hard pro-union, I'm trying to get the unions back into the school, I'm trying to provide houses for people. You don't have to spend any money. People call that socialist. I don't care what they call it. I call it giving a damn. I put something like that on my site. That's also the pitch I've been using because it's true. I honestly give a damn. People want to call what my policies are socialist, fine. As long as we're helping each other out, that's what matters.
Yeah, that was a great question. And thanks for your answer. Okay, I don't see any more questions for Thomas. So that will conclude the endorsement forum for this election cycle. Thank you so much to everybody that took their time to fill out the questionnaires, which are formidable, and taking the time to be present here in the forum and answer questions. The subcommittee on endorsements will be preparing a report with a recommendation or not for everybody that has asked, and we'll be voting on these endorsements at the next meeting / convention on September 20th.
Cool. Well, thanks, JR, for facilitating that part. So we're slated till 3:30, so we've got about 18 more minutes, 15 or more minutes or so to ask our e-board candidates any more questions. So let's bring it back to getting to know our incoming exec board. And I'd like to bring it back to, Ting had a question that they typed in the chat. Ting, do you want to read that off for us and then jumpstart the next discussion?
Yeah, let me look for it. There we go. So yeah, I just had a question for the e-board candidates. Since there's only 2 POC members running, which is obviously, as we all know, not very representative of the demographics in Sacramento. Also across our membership, it's not very representative of those demographics. I just wanted to know what you guys are planning on doing to actively engage and address, outreach, and retain BIPOC members. And this is open to anyone.
Saw a few people in the chat said they would be willing to respond. How about we go Naomi and then Simon, because you guys both said that you had answers for this.
Sorry, I was just trying to signal that Simon can go first. Because he said he would answer it before my response went.
Okay, so then we'll go Simon and then Naomi. And then anybody else wants to talk.
Okay, I mean, I don't mind going second, but so I'm glad you're asking this, and I just want to say, like, up front, like, I was actually reluctant to run for the e-board for precisely this reason. The only reason I did run is because nominations had closed and this position was still open and they needed someone for it. I love DSA, but this has driven me crazy from the beginning, this exact issue. My style normally, especially in the earlier chapters I was in, was not to run for leadership, but to support my friends who were in leadership by trying to take like admin tasks off their hands and stuff like that, so they could focus on sort of more like, you know, substantive, strategic, you know, the reasons they probably joined DSA in the first place. And I was also encouraging my friends and comrades who weren't white to step up for the leadership positions, not just because they were BIPOC, but because they were brilliant people in their own right. And I kind of want to try and foster that in the chapter here. So I wrote some things down. These are not in any particular order, but so as organizers, we are going to be trying to do outreach to all the new members who are signing up. In theory, I would love to be able to reach out to all of them. Depends on the numbers, but I would want to prioritize outreach to new POC members just to introduce them to the chapter, find out what they're interested in, sort of encourage and steer them towards committees they might be interested in. I think this should be like a monthly point of discussion with the e-board, like a regular item on every monthly agenda is how are we doing on this issue? You can't be embarrassed to talk about it. It's a thing and you got to talk about it, right? So I really think this should be like a monthly ongoing thing we discuss. I am interested in trying to sort of like, this is a bad word, but like advertise our meetings outside of just like DSA only spaces, like especially when we're having them in person, but also online, like just putting up flyers, like, in South Sac, wherever, just outside of Midtown saying, hey, we have these meetings, everyone's invited, here's how to join. Offering technical assistance to people during Zoom times who might not quite know how to set up or use Zoom, making it easier to do that. Trying to reach out, especially to white members to step up and help like admin work, just kind of try and just take all the like sort of, the grindy stuff off the hands of BIPOC members so they can do sort of more, I don't want to call it the fun stuff, but you know what I mean? Like the more strategic, like the brain stuff, I know some DSA chapters have had more success with this than others, so I wanted to actually reach out to them, maybe even in the context of an e-board meeting and see how they did it. I think New Orleans has had quite a bit of success. Long Beach here in California, even San Francisco lately. I was interested in talking to them. And then, yeah, I also just want to make it a point to ask at the e-board meetings, because one of the roles of the organizer is to stay on top of what all the committees are doing, right? And make sure everybody's talking to each other. Now, in theory, all the committees, regardless of what their subject matter is, should be thinking, about the intersectional aspects of all their campaigns. But I want to make sure this comes up at the e-board meetings. Like, if we're going to be campaigning for X or Y, what neighborhoods are we going to? What messages are we using? That kind of thing. So these are just some random ideas in no particular order, but always very excited to hear others.
Naomi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to also add to that. I want to reach out to Black and Indigenous people of color members that we already have and try and cultivate them up to want to be in leadership. And I think a lot of that, to Simon's point, was taking a lot of those just mundane tasks off of their hands. And just not to take over control of it, but just to free them up to be able to take on leadership roles if they want to. I too was also kind of hesitant to even throw my name in for co-chair because I threw it in there and I was waiting to see, okay, who else is running, because I saw a couple of people on there that I was like, okay, if we have more people of color in leadership, I'm going to back out because, hello, I'm pale as hell. But I also want to spotlight and bring to the front of our chapter anything that our people of color membership people are doing. That should be our focus, because from my perspective, the more you see that kind of stuff, the more attention it gets, and the more people, like, if I saw more LGBTQ stuff in the chapter, I'd be like throwing it out to the Gender Health Center and the Rainbow Affirmation groups throughout Sacramento and other places that I have friends. Just say, hey, this is what DSA is doing. you're not in my chapter, but maybe you can help your chapter and bring that stuff into your chapter and shine a light onto that, because that's what's important right now. That it really is to me.
Right on. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this? I think it's an important question. So yeah, Casey, I saw you with a hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I've only been with the chapter since November. You know, we have a lot of people, people of color who are doing a lot of administrative tasks and things for the chapter, and then they're not nominated for these positions that we're going through right now. I'm really disappointed because I would gladly, so I guess as an organizer, you know, I will very actively try to encourage people, you know, that are doing work with the chapter already, you know, try to get them in the pipe to take on these roles, I guess, for next year when we do elections again, because, yeah, it's really disappointing to hear that we have people that are engaged and for whatever reason don't feel comfortable or weren't invited. I don't know. I don't know what happened that they're, you know, they're not in this position right now, but I will definitely try to work with folks to get them, you know, like I said, like up to do that. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously we just need to do better outreach too, I think in general, to expand as a chapter and make sure that expansion, yeah, is like more representative of the local population here. Of, you know, my understanding is the DSA has always been primarily sort of a white man group, mostly a Jewish white man group. And, you know, I'm glad that we've expanded so much, and I hope that we can continue that. So, yeah, but it's important that we be representative, definitely.
One stack. You want to go ahead? Ellen, do you want to go ahead?
That me? Well, I don't like what I'm going to say. I keep thinking I just should keep my mouth shut. Because, James, I like you a lot, but a year ago, we had an opportunity to elect two very competent women of color as co-chairs, and not only that, but they had a joint program for building and expanding the chapter that looked good to me, very, at least, thought out in great detail, and which really would only work if both of them were elected co-chair, and which would have sent quite a message about, you know, who was wanted for leadership. But that's not what we got. So I think while we're thinking about how to bring more Black, Indigenous, and people of color into leadership, we should think about whether we're willing to actually do so. Okay, I think I better stop there.
Fair is fair. Is there anybody, Ben, do you have anything else you want to add to this, or do we want to move on to another question?
Sure, I could go ahead and speak to our class composition. I came up with Resolution 9. So this is not related to my duties as an organizer, but Resolution 9 was inspired by an idea for how socialist organizations in the past, at least going back to, if I may reference Lenin from the Russian Revolution, he talked about how it'd be a crime to just leave workers in the factories. And just in terms of like bringing people in, I think paid educational leave, the approval process is all that's outlined in Resolution 9. I will be releasing a response to some objections raised by members of the CP, the Collective Power Network Caucus. I think this question of class composition is a complex one, and how we increase our membership of you know, like we don't match the Sanders Coalition's supporters as a socialist organization. And so to address that, sabbaticals is one way of going about that. I'll be elaborating more and some responses I'll hope to release by Monday.
Okay. Is there any other, anybody else have anything else to say on this? It doesn't have to just be e-board. You know, any other, this is an important topic. So any other questions, comments, or concerns? People want to expand on this, open stack? Not seeing anybody trying to get on stack there. So we've got, we've only got 3 minutes left. I think we can do one more quick question and then we can wrap up. Sure, why not? How about we use the last few minutes to give Ben the chance to respond to Ian, and then we can, we'll wrap up.
I hope Ian's here. I don't know if you can still see me, Ian.
I still see him here.
Okay, wonderful. Let's see. So in respect, I believe if I remember his question correctly, his question was how to help progressive elements, the progressive element in unions. And I first take issue with the use of progressive, which has different meanings just within the 20th century. I mean, I've heard my union, SAE 1000, which has become the topic of some controversy on the left here in Sacramento. I would say that one thing is that labor has been weakened through neoliberalism, and like right now what we've had is like a lot of like, we've been weakened not just in like our own ability to contribute to what we're making, but like the labor that we're dependent on is like spread all over the world. And that sort of resulted in a kind of corporatism that all unions are forced to participate in. So my thinking on, you know, what is our relationship as a socialist organization to unions is that we ideologically would have to be in tandem with them. They have their relationships that they need to keep because we're inside of this sort of incrementalist framework for how we deal with and navigate with institutional power. To help out a progressive element in every union actually requires years and lots of work. And unfortunately, most of the people who read Jacobin and like Jared Abbott or people who are for the confrontation with Democratic Party are not adequately thinking about things from a movement wing perspective. And I will also want to respond to Jared Abbott's presentation of the terms of debate between a coalition approach to the Democratic Party like the Justice Democrats and a confrontation approach that Megan Day and Micah Utrick talked about. But yeah, and that's my response to Ian. I don't think we have the capacity yet.
Okay. Well, we are at 3:29, the last minute of this. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's time to wrap up and go enjoy the rest of our Saturdays. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to all of our representatives from different campaigns who spoke today. Thank you to our nominees who are stepping up for the next executive board. We love you. You guys are doing an important thing, taking the reins at an important time. I mean, it's always an important time to step up the leadership, but you know, especially now, with all the campaigns we got going on. Before we go, in case anybody has not, I'm pasting the registration, the invitation to the convention in the chat. If you haven't registered yet, please do so. The convention is going to be next Sunday, the 20th, starting at 11 a.m. Registration is until the 16th. Please do so, register, be there. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say this forum is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Again, the information's in the chat if you need it. Enjoy your Saturdays.